Hey guys, it's Ben from Fantasy Football Dome. I'm your New York Giants correspondent for the 2022 season for the Fantasy Football Network. And we're just going to get started right away. And we're going to be talking about Week 1, New York Giants at the Tennessee Titans. And I'm going to start off with the fantasy starts and sits for the New York Giants players. So, one of my favourite players in the NFL, in fantasy football as a whole, is Saquon Barkley, Saquads, if you will. He's a player with top 10 running back upside. He needs to find that form he had in 2018, 2019. But he will be getting a significant amount of carries, a significant amount of targets. And he's going to be one of the main weapons in that offense that Danny Dimes leans on quite a bit. So I think he's definitely a start for this week, especially against a weakened Titans defense. And yeah, if he can get the ball rolling early on in the season, he could have a very strong fantasy season. Another start is Kadarius Toney. Now, he's not been talked about a lot across the NFL, but in the preseason for the Giants, he's been doing very well, especially in the camps. He's been showing that he can not only get separation, but what he can do with the ball after the catch. And I think he has the potential to take the wide receiver one starting role very early on from Kenny Golladay. He could get the majority of targets in the Giants' offense. So we'll see how his versatility and everything he can do with the ball, how that exposes the Titans' defense. My sits are Kenny Golladay, wide receiver that is on a huge contract, was signed in free agency last season, got 0 touchdowns. It's been very disappointing. And then in preseason, he's not shown anything. He's not shown a desire to care about the team. His effort has been lackluster. But maybe that's just a preseason. Maybe he'll come into his own in the start of the season. Maybe he's learned that he needs to give more. But for now, he's sitting on my bench and I'm fading him in all fantasy leagues. Another sit, an interesting one, is Wandel Robinson. So a player drafted by the Giants in the second round. A similar player to Toney, a versatile gadget player. But at the moment, he's not carved out a role. He's not even guaranteed to be the wide receiver 3. So, I think we should watch how he goes, see what he does. If he does start to perform well, you pick him up off waivers or you take him on your bench and put in your starting lineups. But for now, I'm fading him for week 1 until he carves out a role. Now the injury report. So, limited practice. Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari, Sterling Shepard and Dane Belton. So 4 players there which were expected to be starters in their positions. We'll see if they're able to play at the weekend. So keep an eye out on that. Kadarius Toney is fully healthy and available, which is good news. As mentioned earlier, he's one of my fantasy starters. And then in the past week, we've had 3 players that have been put on IR, which is Shane Lemieux, a left guard, Rodarius Williams, who was the cornerback 3-4, depending on injuries and everything, but he's on IR now, so that's not going to happen. And also Ellison Smith, who's the edge rusher. So they're going to be out for at least 3, 4, 5 weeks. But we'll keep an eye out on their rehabilitation and everything. See if they can make a role and come back into the team. In other news, the Giants have converted $17 million of Leonard Williams' base salary into a signing bonus. So the Giants before this week were below the cap budget. And by doing this, they've created $12 million in 2022 cap space, which is very good. Brian Daboll is also making the Giants practice on a soggy field in rainy conditions in preparation for the game in Nashville, which has a 60% chance of rain. Now, I really like this, and I think it shows the initiative from the coach, and he's getting his players prepared for everything they're going to face at the weekend. Even if it's a 60% chance rain, it's not 100%, but he's making sure they're prepared, and I love it. All right, players to watch. So this player, Daniel Bellinger, he's listed as a starting tight end. He could see a lot of snaps, and he could compete for a lot of receptions and maybe even red zone touchdowns. But fantasy-wise, he's not relevant at the moment, but he could carve out a significant role if we see wide receivers like Shepard and Golladay go down with injuries. Their vacation of targets could see him shoot up fantasy projections, and he could produce quite well. But we'll have to see how he does in week 1. He also suffered a concussion in the last pre-season game, but he's all cleared to play on Sunday, so that's good news. And finally, Danny Dimes. I'm an advocate for Danny Dimes. He's coming into his contract year. He's got a significantly improved O-line, a load of wide receiver help, tight end help, running back help, everything that he needs to succeed. If he doesn't do it this season, I think the Giants do move on. But if there was a season where he does break out and become a decent quarterback that you can start on your fantasy rosters week in, week out with no hesitation, it would be this season. But he's definitely a player to keep an eye out on, see how he performs. We'll see how he does in 2022. And that's everything from me. So make sure to stay in touch with the Fantasy Football Network app and website for more. And I'll be back in week 2 to give you more news, updates, everything you need to know.